Good evening. Welcome to the regular Selectmen meeting, February 10th, 2014. Would you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item, approval of minutes from business meeting of January 27th and the workshop and executive session of January 22nd. Any questions?
Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes for business meeting of January 27th, and the minutes for the workshop and executive session of January 22nd, 2014.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, citizens' input. Is there anybody who would like to be heard tonight?
Absolutely.
State your name for the record, please.
Bob Serba, 23 Summit Street. I watched the meeting Monday night. I was sick, so I didn't make it. And I gotta say, I was concerned to say the least. I noticed Donnie's not here, it's too bad. I don't think I've been that disturbed since this whole thing started, this whole thing rolled out. And I sent you guys a copy of some of the notes I took on this. One of the things I noticed was Gary Suter states we haven't had an open shift since we've been out of Paxton. We have more paramedics than we need. If that's the case, then that would possibly suggest the same thing that Paxton was suggesting, that they didn't have full paramedic coverage all the time. We've had this conversation before. Suter also states he will reach out to the local BLS on the fire department, yet not one person's been called that I'm aware of from the fire department, and I've asked around. This past Saturday, there was no SRS ambulance on site for the cheerleader competition, and Lester had to respond to my next-door neighbor's call. First, the cop showed up, then another cop showed up, and then 20 minutes later, Lester showed up. And I'm sure Carl was glad that Spencer was in the area when he had a stroke last week. Now, according to Suter, he says he's doing arrangements. He's trying to work out regional arrangements. So where does he go? He goes to East Brookfield. Now, am I wrong, or did East Brookfield just try to pull out of our school district? They're in the process of doing that. We also had a regional agreement with Paxton. And what happened with that? Jay Conti, at least 3 weeks before, in the newspaper, was saying how he was not getting along with Spencer Rescue Squad, yet everybody on his board acted like it was a shock when they went to the Paxton meeting and found out that, geez, they may not actually go through with this agreement. So I'm kind of amazed. This is in the paper. You know, I went to that meeting. Donnie and Gary were at that meeting. And I remember one of the selectmen for Paxton asked Mr. Suter, he said, what was this about a profane email? Oh, well, it wasn't an email, it was a voicemail. Of course, Mr. Suter couldn't produce the voicemail. Now, this isn't the first time this has happened with Mr. Suter. So if you think we're going to be able to regionalize with anybody, it's not going to happen. Nobody's going to do it because they've either talked to Paxton, or they've read the paper, or they've seen some of the stuff that's been pulled by this group. And that is probably the most disturbing, because we're not going to be able to regionalize with somebody, because as I'm watching the meeting, Gary's talking about how he wants to put everybody under his umbrella. Well, yeah, if I was making $85,000 a year, I'd want to keep my job too. And that's what this is about. You know, you guys want language changes in here? One of the language changes should be that if you're not gonna pay Spencer Rescue Squad needs to start going after this money in small claims court. When I mentioned it to Gary Suter and I mentioned it to Mike Malash, they both told me the same thing. It's not worth it. Really? I see oil companies, when I go to small claims court and take customers to court in town, I see oil companies go in there and the magistrate does a whole list of them, and within 15 minutes they're out of there. But yet, Mr. Suter and Mr. Malash feel that this isn't really worth it, yet we're spending $150,000 a year to do this now. And that's $450,000 for 3 years. The other thing, the language change benefits Suter and the Spencer Rescue Squad, not this town. Now, I understand we have to have a ambulance service. I get it. But we could have had Vital Ambulance for exactly the same service we got right now. And we talked about this, Adam, and everybody said there's no such thing as a free lunch. Well, I've read the contract, because Adam sent it to me originally when this all was all going on, and it was a 3-year contract for $0. Now, I'll bet everybody's sitting there thinking how that might be nice to have $150,000 in our pocket right now, going into a $700,000 deficit. I guess the thing that's got me rattled about this is none of this stuff stops. You know, Mr. Berthium is sitting up there saying, Well, I don't understand why we don't just vote on this now. At what point do you understand, Mr. Bertham, what a conflict of interest is?
Bobby,
You work, no, this is, I could talk about this, this is public record. I pulled the records, he worked for Mike Malash in 2012 to the tune of $20,000, and not one time have you ever accused yourself from a vote. In fact, you've done nothing but cheerlead up here for it. At what point do you start looking out for the citizens of Spencer and not the citizens of the Spencer Rescue Squad? Because I'm getting a little tired of it.
Bobby, that being said, okay, you know, when we took a vote and we said we were gonna go through the June 30th, we were still looking at other options. You know, I can appreciate your comment, and we gave you the opportunity to do that, but, you know, we are still looking at what opportunities we have and what opportunities they can come up with. Unfortunately, being a nonprofit, as you know, we have no say over how they spend their money. But it is our job to at least keep an ambulance service going right now,
And I
as you
understand
know.
that, Gary. I
And
totally
we had
understand
that
that.
conversation. And, you know, and I can appreciate your feelings at that point, but, you know, and again, you know, anybody, listen, we're all surviving. So, you know, I appreciate your comments, but, you know, we are looking at it, and that's all I can tell you.
And I
We're
get that,
looking at
Gary, and
everything.
my issue with this is I understand we need to have an ambulance service. But I'm getting tired of everybody kowtowing the Spencer Rescue Squad and trying to make sure that nobody hurts Gary's feelings. That's the first time he's ever come up here with his hat in his hand and didn't act like they did at the Paxton meeting, when O'Connor stood up there and started saying, well, we're to negotiate now. Well, yeah, because you had a $150,000 contract with us in your pocket, that's what they used to have with Paxton. Because Paxton, when I talked to the town manager, said they had a line item up to $150,000. So of course, they would go looking for an override for us, so they were gonna shut their doors, because they knew they were gonna lose Paxton. And this is all water under the bridge. But what about
And
the
that's
people?
kind of why I want to stop you there. It
But-
is. There's nothing
but
we
the
can do
point
to
is-
change that.
The point is, Gary, what about the people that have the subscription service? If the mutual aid picks them up, that exemption that they get no longer goes. Their insurance company has to pick that up. And he even mentioned that at the meeting. Gary mentioned that. Well, if somebody else, if it's mutual aid, then, you know, they have to pay for it.
Well,
And they're still
they would
putting-
bill, that's obvious. I mean, obviously, if East Brookfield came and got me, you know, they have a right to bill me. It's just the way it is. I mean, I understand where you're going with it, but it's just the way the process works. You know, it's not, Spencer Rescue Squad isn't gonna bill me for East Brookfield service.
Well, my point is, with the subscription service that they're still running, if people are paying for the service and somebody else picks them up, then they still end up having to pay for it anyway. You know, my point is, Gary, there needs to be something in the language that changes, that they start going after the money that's owed them. And stop putting this off, that, oh, we just, you know, we're just gonna let this go. You know, and the fact that Mr. Berthium's up here, you know, well, we're gonna kick this can down the road, or due diligence, it's like, please, give me a break. It's nothing to do with due diligence, it's about being a cheerleader for Spencer Rescue Squad, bottom line.
That being said.
Yeah, under subscription, okay? What that does, Bob, is it takes and whatever the insurance company pays, and if there's a difference, that's what your subscription pays for. It doesn't pay for the whole.
No, I understand it, but it does
And
pay
even
for a
on
push
East
to
Brookfield,
that.
it works on
No, I
East Brookfield.
understand.
If East
I
Brookfield comes
understand.
in and covers a call for Spencer, okay, that subscription, if they took it, still is in effect. But you still get a bill from the insurance company, from the ambulance service anyways.
Right.
And then when the insurance company comes in, whatever the difference is between, they let that run.
Right.
And that's the way it still works.
Which is fine,
Whether
but-
it's mutual aid or not.
But when they do insurance pickups, and they get picked up, somebody gets picked up, and Mike and Gary both told me this, pardon me, he said, well, we lose that money, that's because when we talked about this originally, I
Yeah.
talked to Gary at length.
Yeah.
2 or 3 occasions, I talked to Mike Elijah at length.
Yeah.
And I said, well, how come you guys are looking for the money? Well, it's Obamacare, it's this, it's that, it's the fact that.
Can I just say something? Listen, honest to God, you know, we're not gonna re-debate this all tonight.
That's fair,
You know,
that's
we
fair.
bought up till June
Yeah.
to have it looked at and, you know, and we all had concerns about language. We all said we were gonna give the administrator opportunity to see how we were gonna move forward with it, so, and I appreciate it, Bobby, but I give you the opportunity to speak. I don't wanna debate it because we're not gonna solve it
Well, I
tonight.
just wanna make sure that.
But it is in the open, I mean, I just want you to know that, it's not.
I just wanna make sure we're doing our due diligence, because what I saw that Monday night, that wasn't due diligence. It was on a couple of people's parts, Mr. Stevens and yourself, You know, Bo didn't say much, but as for the rest of this, it's like, enough is enough. You know, just make sure that we're looking out for the town as well as Spencer Rescue Squad. That's all I'm asking.
And that's our job, so, thank
Fair
you.
enough. Thank you.
And Jerry, just to just emphasize what you said, and Bob, we do plan to take a look at that, you know, here at the end of the year. We're gonna continue that contract. This is, we have to go forward with the conditions we have.
No, I
And with the, and to look closely at the numbers and the reports on response time. So it's not as if we agreed that we would go forward with the terms as they are and take a look at redoing that language in June. So I don't want, you know, people to think that this is done and this is the way it's gonna be for 2.5 more years. Okay, but yeah, one thing you bring up, which I need to pursue, is this whole question of subscription, because I don't recall a report on their subscription amounts, and maybe that's been in the reports, but that's something that I would like to see how they're doing on subscription, because people have asked me, or made the comment to me, well, you know, I guess I don't have to pay my subscription anymore, and I said, well, I plan to pay mine, and in fact, they said I would hope that people would, you know, continue that, because it's a good deal. It really is, and if that can save the town some money going forward, if that changes the financial balance for them, it's a good deal, and I'd like those services accounted for, so.
If you like, I can email Mr. Suter and just ask him for a revenue summary regarding the subscription drive.
That would be great, I'd appreciate that.
You'll take care of that. Okay. Communications, CIC Grant Award, third consecutive year. Very good.
Yeah, I forwarded you all an email today, and actually I knew last Thursday when I got a call from Administration and Finance that we did receive third straight year of funding. It's, again, a reduced amount. We requested 200, and we did receive 80. That's just spread out among 30 towns. Again, we're happy, excited, all 30 of us, that we're 3 for 3 in terms of being rewarded. One of the other things the state added and wanted me to know that they also awarded 4 other different collaboratives for stormwater, and they all are trying to emulate our program, and he said that's something that we should be proud of. So I just wanted to pass that on, and want to thank Robin Craver. The paper's not here, but Robin Craver, who's the town administrator in Charlton, she helped write the grant this past fall as we were going through, obviously, our financial crisis. I asked her if she could step up, and she did. So we have a meeting with the commissioner from the Department of Environmental Protection on Thursday, depending on the weather, and we're happy to say that we're doing everything we can. There's still some work that we need to do within our budget, and when Steve comes for his presentation, we can talk a little bit more about stormwater then, and in terms of what the grant's been able to do and what we still need to do on our own, because there is a big component we still need to do on our own. But that being said, we've received $600,000 in 3 years, so.
Good job. Thank you. Okay, new business. Action item, vote to authorize additional emergency snow and ice.
Mr. Butler is here, as Mr. Tyler is unable to attend due to conflict tonight. So you do have, I emailed you guys on Thursday afternoon. Obviously, we've had more storm events since then, but here's a copy of what Steve sent us.
Good.
So we can talk about that.
I'm gonna fix that.
Good job,
No,
Bo.
no, don't worry.
Good job, Bo. Mr. Butler.
So, just to go through real quick, Evan can answer any specific questions, but as you can see from the front sheet, the original budget for FY14 was $50,000 in labor for snow and ice, and $125,000 in expenses. $125,000 is to be spent on materials and also on private contractors. As we all know, the budget is typically underfunded. We've gone as high as $300,000 or $400,000 in some years. On January 13th, this board approved an additional $50,000 specifically for expenses, which brought the total up to $175,000. And you can see the year-to-date expenses that we are deficit spending now. We are it's still under in terms of labor, but again, over on expenses, which, again, the majority of that is materials. So based on that, let's see, we have a deficit. I did receive a call from the assistant accountant today that, the request today is for 60,000, and based on the additional information, payroll that came in and expenses that came in last week, you can see here that the deficit is showing 37 in expenses, but we're really around 52, so, I explained to Eben and Steve, and as they know, that this board likes to go week to week. We meet 3 times a month. If there's a need to go over, make an additional request. We know we have another storm planned on Thursday, so it's possible that this would be again on the agenda either next Wednesday or the following Monday, the 24th. But for this evening, they request $60,000 of additional expenses. I'll leave it up to the board or Mr. Butler to ask for more now, if you'd rather do it now or wait till a later day, but I'll turn it back over to Eben, so.
Who has choice of, I suggest upper and lowers at 75, so we're not here next week.
Evan, what's the, I know, I talked to you last week, but I know the salt is getting tough to get. Is that okay now and wide open?
It probably won't be okay for the rest of the year, from what I read, there's a nationwide shortage.
You having a hard time trying to get it up, yeah?
I got my token load for the week, let's say. I probably have at least 200 tons on back order, and it's just not arriving. The week before, I was able to get some out of New York, a 7-hour one-way trip.
The same stuff, the green stuff?
Same stuff,
yeah.
right from where they're mining it, up towards Syracuse, New York. But it's pretty expensive for them to truck it there, but that was kind of a fill-in gap measure to satisfy us. But every community around, we're in a pact with other towns here, and they're all crying. It's a token load here or there. That's why we're using more sand.
I think Oxford was running short.
Oxford, Auburn, West Boylston, Paxton, Leicester, we're all in the same.
Yeah, we have a joint purchasing arrangement to help keep the cost down, but the trend has been over the last several years. I think Oxford was the trendsetter in purchasing this type of material, but now there's a collaboration that's doing it and purchasing it jointly to keep the cost down, but that also drives up the demand, so.
And is it just the green stuff, pal, okay, or
It's the white stuff too.
It's all of it?
Yeah, DOT is running a shortage. They actually get theirs out of Worcester, and they have talking to one of the local guys here is, you know, they'll have 400 ton on order and they'll get 200. And because of the weather on the whole countrywide. Salt was coming from Cleveland, and they had their issues out there by temperatures and storms and everything else. Rail cars are coming into Westfield, Mass. 14 rail cars. As soon as they're unloaded, they're all spoken for, so. Gonna be a tough rest of the winter. You're gonna see more sand. You're gonna see more white roads than you have.
With our collaborative arrangement, does it come to some sort of regional distribution point for the towns that make the purchasing?
Westfield.
Well, eventually, but they deliver it to the town, we don't go pick it up. you know what I
Right.
mean? So we have a collaboration, but we'll get deliveries right on site.
Oh, I see.
In a 7-ton truck.
Fighting with cities down south even this winter, huh?
Atlanta's looking for another big one, apparently.
Yeah.
I would say this, and I don't have an issue with going from the 50 to 75. We do have another storm coming in Wednesday, Thursday. Who knows what it's going to be, but it seems like even after we plow and clean up and you get the cold nights, we're back out there doing it again, so.
That little bit last night, they had to go out there and do it again last night, just for that little inch we got, so, you know.
What you
Those are the
find-
ones that kill you.
What you find is, now that we have less salt, we can't burn it right off. So there's gonna be a lot more refreezing events. Generally, you can get the roads black and you're good and you don't have to come back, but I think we'll have more occurrences of coming back.
Not to jeopardize safety or anything, but is there an opportunity that you can use a sand mix on
We
some?
are, right now,
Okay.
salt sand, we're trying to use salt sand on all the so-called dirt roads. And for instance, last night we did all the main roads. Today we did all the dirt roads on straight time versus overtime.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I just have a question about is there a downside if we do it 75? I mean, are we over purchasing, or are we gonna use what we purchase, or what, the 75 give us a little margin and it eventually it comes back if it's not used, or are we purchasing materials that's gonna sit over the summer, or that's not likely?
Not like it,
No.
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 I think we'll be back again.
We'll be back again.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
just,
wanna
it's
be-
just that, this will be, possibly avoid him coming in next Wednesday,
Okay.
cause next Monday's a holiday, so you'll have a meeting on Wednesday. By doing this, an additional 15,000 means you might not see him until the 24th rather than on the 19th, so.
I mean, I don't wanna be cavalier about 15, but I mean, if it's a matter of just
Or
a week here, yeah.
We still have all of March to go, too.
Right.
February was our busiest month last year. It
What was it?
February was.
Was,
The anniversary of the big storm was yesterday.
26,000.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Yeah.
75.
Yeah.
That's,
So I make a motion to allow the highway department to deficit spend up to, for, an extra amount up to $75,000.
We have a motion?
Second.
A second, all those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Thank you.
What else do you need?
Can you use a salt shaker, Ed?
Next month, right?
Weather's gonna change in 10 days, the weatherman said.
5 weeks away, spring, don't forget that.
Groundhog Life.
Okay, next item, letter of support for APR program for small farm. Mr. Administrator.
As you know, last year, there was a request from proponents to apply for an agricultural preservation restriction on the small farm. In fact, the town meeting, I think we added $3,000 to the kitty, if you will. Now that the application's undergoing and in process, one of the things they've asked us to do is put together just a letter of support from this board, acknowledging several things that have been done that'll help strengthen their application requests. One was the DCR was looking for confirmation that we did adopt the right to farm bylaw, that Otis is tracking permits and construction on protected farmland, and that the Agricultural Commission has been appointed in conformance with the right to farm bylaw, which was done today. So, this letter will help strengthen their application. It's a competitive process. Just because you apply for the APR program does not mean you get awarded, so, it's a great opportunity. We've talked about it before. So just authorization for you guys to submit the letter.
Okay, any questions?
So this is a letter that would be sent?
Yep.
Didn't we already do that? No, we didn't.
We did it on the other one last time.
We did the rails trail one last week, I think.
I thought we did a letter on this first and then the
No, they came in, I
they
think
wanted
we,
us to give them some money.
Which you requested, then this is for,
Did we end up giving them the money?
No.
correct,
Yeah, we did.
we did,
I
at town
voted
meeting.
again.
Yeah,
You and I
this is-
voted.
yeah.
But they,
this is for the thing.
what that did was also go into the application as part of
This
the
is-
town match.
this is different than the one we did when Richie was here.
Right.
Rich was, no, okay,
Different,
Rich was
that's
here for
what-
the actual
right.
Yeah,
bylaw.
different.
He came for actual bylaw. Before that, Ginny and I think some other folks came in looking for support for the small farm to apply for a program to the state, which allows the state to buy basically development rights.
Right.
So they'll give them money and basically lock up the property with a conservation restriction. One of the things that they needed to do to help their application when they go for the APR was to show town commitment. And one of the things they did was ask us for a small donation of $3,000. In addition, the Common Ground Land Trust has gone out and gotten other fundraising to provide a local community match. They'll then apply for the application's gonna be applied to the state. They'll show a local commitment, local support, some funds that are gonna be matching the state dollars. And then this would be a letter of support from us saying, yes, please, the community supports this application for that project, for that
And I
program.
believe since we did that, now they're selling the house, the farm,
Yeah, they split
and the
it.
little
Correct.
corner
Right.
lot there,
Correct.
down to the river. That's
Right,
gonna
they
be
are
sold.
separated,
Right.
correct.
So,
Okay.
okay.
I'll make a motion to send out a letter of support for the APR program for the small farm project.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
I just thought we had done this
now
one.
that was the other one.
It's been in front of you a couple times, but for other things.
Yeah, no big deal.
Okay, vote to place vacant seat for the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District and Constable on annual town election ballot.
Correct. I did receive a request from the town clerk for the upcoming ballot. As you know, as you may not know, there are two positions that are coming up in the middle of their terms. One was Mr. Howard's position from East Brookfield, so the board needs to vote to place that seat on the ballot. Spencer residents are allowed to vote for that in addition to East Brookfield residents.
Did they just fill that last week?
They filled that only till May.
Only till
Yeah, they
May.
have to run.
Okay, so that person or anybody else that wishes to take over that seat can run at the nearest election midterm, okay? And the other position was Mr. Penas, who passed away unfortunately. He is a constable position, so that is also a vacant seat, which we're not appointing anyone now. We do have some, two other constables that we use. And then what we'll do is we'll have an election and place that seat on there as well. So I just need a formal vote from the Board of Selectmen to place those two seats on the election ballot for, I believe it's May 13th.
So moved.
Motion.
Yeah, Gary, just a clarification from Adam, I was not aware of that. So the Mr. Howard's seat from East Brookfield has to be filled by an East Brookfield resident.
Correct.
But the whole district votes?
That's correct.
Oh, I was not aware of that. That's interesting. I thought it was exclusively East Brookfield residents. Oh, that's good to know.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Vote, non-exercise of right of purchase, Chapter 61A land, Lot 2, Wilson Street, Carl Wilson owner. Mr. Goddard.
Okay, you guys have had several of these in the last few years, in which the town, under the statute for chapter 61, the town has first right of refusal for any property that's currently in chapter 61 that property owners seek to change the use of the property from agricultural to something else. So if you're familiar with the Wilson Farm, the Wilson Street property, you've already undertaken part of this process. I think when we did the solar farm, I think we did that at that time. He's done several other properties. Recently, Mr. Norquist, I think, was the last one on Gale Road. We cut out a single lot from there. So if you look at the map, the plan, you can see there's a proposal to separate two lots out of the farm. You can see the large shaded area.
That's where that solar farm is, right?
The solar farm is on the far east behind Paxton Road.
Yeah.
The main farm is kind of like, you can see the curve in the road where the farmhouse is. So that's where the fields are. So the very far left, I think it may be still wooded a little bit, Jason, a little bit wooded?
Yeah, there's a field here,
Okay,
but our lot is a field in the beginning and then.
right. So Jason Manette, his name, the Manettes are on the purchase and sale agreement in which the Wilsons will be separating those two lots as house lots. And then, so as part of the purchase and sale agreement, you get copies of that. You also get copies of other information. So essentially, the town has 120 days from the point that you receive the notification of the purchase and sale agreement. You have 120 days to schedule a town meeting and act, if you want to purchase the property, obviously get the funds, and then you can match the purchase and sale. Or you could take a vote tonight to not exercise that right, and then let it go, and not hold back the sale. So there's a form, you would vote, you'd sign it, it would get recorded, the assessors would get a copy, and they could move forward with the sale.
Is it just lot two, Jason? Just lot two?
At this time, it's only lot one.
Oh, lot one. It says lot two.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jay, this is the lot after, coming down the street after your
Right
parent.
across from Joe Ford.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
There's two lots there. One of them is what we want to purchase, the other one my brother.
Okay,
is looking to
gotcha.
purchase.
So we
I don't know why they're both not on here, but.
They're both on here, but because it's not a purchase and sale agreement on the other lot,
Oh,
so we
we
wait.
won't act until that time.
okay, yeah.
Had notification been to all the proper boards and they're not.
Correct, if you look at the front page, the planning board, board of assessors, conservation commission, so.
Everybody,
And nobody,
I have not received any notification, so.
okay. Any questions?
I would vote not to exercise our right of purchase, on lot two Wilson Street, on the property that Carl Wilson owns.
Second, just a question for Adam. So, Adam, this leaves the 61A status, and is there does the state get money back?
It's
Because
actually the town.
Yeah, we
the town-
get,
Right.
So what they'll do is the assessors will come up with a calculation for that piece of the property only, in terms of what the remaining, or, basically what they've, the benefit of what they've had in the current, program. I think it's every 10 years you're allowed to re-up, so let's say they're in year 3, so whatever benefit they've had for the last 3 years, there's a
Well,
yeah, I
you
think
get
it's,
gain.
they go back 3 years, and you
Okay.
pay 3 years taxes.
Yeah,
or
there's a
something.
calculation, so the Wilsons will have to, well, or as part of the agreement, there'll be a payback to
To
the
the
town.
town for taking it back.
And then what happens is we actually have a fund that money would go into. There's actually on the town meeting, one of the first articles, there's actually, where all the revolving fund articles, there's actually a clause there, or a paragraph that says, some of the money that gets returned here goes into the I think it's the land stabilization acquisition fund, so.
And then the property goes back on the tax rolls with,
Right.
construction of the home, and that's a good thing.
Right, that's not a bad thing.
But what it does is it allows communities that have been giving a tax incentive program to people for farmland or recreation land or forest land, it gives the town an opportunity. Some towns have acted on, properties for sale, if there's a 50-lot subdivision, or 100-lot subdivision, and they don't wanna see it, and it's very important in terms of protecting the character of the neighborhood. There are towns that have gone out and actually gone to town meeting, raised the funds, and purchased the property. But what you've seen in the last couple of years is usually it's been single-family lots, cut out, and then the remaining portion remains in 61.
So I have a motion, I have a second. Mr. Selectman Fritz recused himself. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You're all set, Jay.
I'll say, so we'll sign the paperwork and come back tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay. You can come back. You're allowed. I don't like you out there.
Take them back.
Scary with that.
Okay. Any old business? None.
No?
Okay. Town Administrator's Report, discussion, initial fiscal year 2015 budget presentation.
Okay.
Mr. Goddard.
All right, good evening. So in your packet, I provide you with some initial budget information. There's a 4-page cover letter. In addition to that, an updated budget calendar, and then budget sheets. The first 2 pages are the revenues and appropriations, followed by estimates for our revenues for FY15, and then a budget summary, which is a 1-pager for all departments, and then individual department request summaries, which is a 7-pager. So, starting in the packet, and this coincides with the spreadsheet, so you can go back and forth as you wish. So for FY 2015, actually, I'll back up a little bit. So this process started right after Thanksgiving. So, right after Thanksgiving, I met with the Board of Selectmen, and we discussed budget goals. I provided a packet of information to department heads, assigned them with materials that they were required to present as part of their budget requests. They had from beginning of December to the beginning of January to go through the process of creating their budgets for FY15, updating the long-range capital plan, making individual department requests, and as I described to you earlier, in earlier meetings, also provide narrative in terms of a municipal services review, so that in the upcoming months, this board will be able to go through, and also the finance committee invited them, and also we'll do these through public hearings. We'll have the opportunity to get some education from different department heads in terms of how their budgets are set up, how their personnel is set up, why it's set up that way, the services that we provide. And this board will go through the process of analyzing all services. And as we work towards attacking this deficit that we have, tackling this deficit that we have, you'll have some choices to make as we go forward with the FY15 budget in terms of what services we continue to maintain, which ones may you choose to ask for an override for, or which ones do you choose that we just no longer proceed with. So, as you know, I always start with the revenue side of things. First thing I do is, we don't go back to looking at what, normally we don't look back and say, these are what all our expenses are, and now let's make the revenues work. We always start from the revenue side and then figure out what the challenges are on the expense side. From a revenue standpoint, the increase over last year for FY 215 is estimated to be $362,200. This money is the result of the 2.5% increase on the tax levy. So of our 18, $19 million in revenues, our $10, $11 million in tax levy, that's the one item that is pretty much, you can determine what it's gonna be. You know what 2.5% is on top of that. In addition, we also factor in some new growth. I factored in $75,000 this year. Last year, we had $178,000 in actual in the year we're in now, which is really abnormal because we've really been in the 70 range. Last year, we had the added new growth that came from the solar panel farm on Wilson Street, which added a huge amount, and some other building. So the new revenue that's coming from our taxes this year is estimated to be $362,000. The change in the tax levy in terms of debt exclusions, there's a reduction this year in terms of the library renovation project. The library note has been paid for, so that debt has come off. If you look in the spreadsheet, the numbers that I have for Bay Path, for the vocational debt, that is their project that they've begun. That first portion of borrowing is about $42,000. That's level funded from last year. I have not yet received the payment for this year. I'm assuming it's that way. And also the bond premiums, which we pay annually back to the voters, and if we received any bond premiums. So those are the only things that I haven't, are not solidified, but the other debt exclusion numbers are. So if you're looking on the spreadsheet, we have approximately $11.8 million in tax levy, and that's the tax levy limit, with a $362,000 increase I mentioned from last year. And then the debt exclusions, we have approximately $731,000 in debt exclusions. That includes Wire Village School, Bay Path, the fire department ladder truck, which is, I think, in year 4 or 5, town hall renovations, which is in year 3 or 4, and then the Sibley, which we're going into our second year of payment for that. Okay, so of our total $19.5 million in revenues, $12.5 million approximately comes from the levy. The only new amount that we get to play with this year is $362,000. Okay, any questions in terms of tax levy? Okay. The next estimated portion of our revenues, we have 3 main portions. One is tax levy, the second is local aid, which comes from the state in the form of our cherry sheet, and the third is local estimated receipts, which is our revenues that come from miscellaneous revenues such as excise tax and dog licenses, et cetera, et cetera. As far as our cherry sheet estimate goes, the governor released 2 weeks ago what is known as the House 1 budget. He announced a level funding essentially for state aid, which disappointed a lot of us at the municipal level. In fact, actually there was a decrease for the town of Spencer. Local aid, so about 1.9 million of our 2.2 million is level. However, he had reductions in pilots for state-owned land, so we have land like House State Park, they pay a pilot to us for that. He announced a reduction in that. And then another reduction in public library offset receipts, which was fairly small, but essentially our local aid was going from 2.241 million down to 2.233 million, a reduction of about $8,000. Last year, we had about, I wanna say, about $100,000 increase. We had, I think, 50 in the beginning of the year, and then when they bumped it up, we had like another 50. So that's not a positive sign. However, we did, once this came out, we did receive some notifications from our representatives and our senator that the House 2 budget and then eventually the Senate budget, they hope to have some increase there. So but right now, in my budget, conservatively budgeted, there's no increase for local aid. Local estimated receipts, I've also level funded. If you look at the spreadsheet that I provided, in terms of revenues, we've been over the last few years hanging around 1.9 million. Last year, we had 2.052 million. The major increase there was building permits that were applied for the brewery and for, again, the solar panel farm. So that was about $100,000 in additional revenue in terms of Otis fees that we're not gonna count on this year. So again, just under the 1.9. You know, we have maybe a few $1,000s we can play with there, but keep in mind, this is one of the main areas that you can generate free cash. So I certainly don't wanna go anywhere near above 1.9. I think 1.865 is comfortable. You know, again, those are all discretionary revenues that come from how many building permits are people gonna apply for, how many cars are people gonna buy, what are they gonna pay for their excise tax, how many, bag fees are people gonna buy at for the transfer station, all those miscellaneous revenues, get it up in there. So, the most important thing to note this year, in terms of available funds and transfers, last year in December, in order to balance the budget, when we had the additional $700,000 increase from Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District, we used $400,000 in free cash. This budget right now does not use any free cash to balance the budget. What I wanted to do was put together all of the budget requests from staff, the way they were funded last year in May, any other changes, any add-ons, and in addition to that, the proposed revenues, not using that free cash to balance. Again, because it's not there this year. We have free cash, but as you know, we use it for one-time expenses, which is basically our capital plan. So keep that in mind as we move forward towards the end of the discussion, which obviously will be a deficit, as you know. Overlay surplus, one of the things they've done is, we've increased slightly to 25,000. What they had done in years past was every 3 years they'll do a reevaluation. And what they've been doing, every 3 years is doing one lump sum, $100,000 or so transfer from overlay surplus, and then they spread it out every 3 years. So knowing that takes place, discuss with the assessor, why don't we just have, we have an annual cost, let's just factor that in, and you just transfer the money from overlay surplus every year, rather than waiting every 3 years and doing a major transfer. The way we generate overlay surplus, just as a refresher, overlay surplus is the money left over that we don't spend from abatements. So you look at page 2 on my spreadsheet, which is the appropriations, the amount to be raised, all the expenses that we have factored in, our operating budget, the enterprise funds, the schools. If you look down on the bottom, you'll see an allowance for abatements and exemptions. So what we do is, we'll have our tax levy, it's estimated 11.5 million, but guaranteed, we're gonna have applications for abatements. So what we do is reserve a certain portion of funds, in case those people get abatements, that money is then essentially transferred to backfill the tax levy, so that our levy is maintained. If we didn't do that, and people apply for abatements, you'd obviously fall short, right? So any money that's left over from that 108,000 that's not used in abatements will get put into an account called overlay surplus. They're allowed to build that up, and what we do is we transfer money out of that overlay, and we use it for a couple things. One is we use it for tax title, because that is a tax-related item. So we have to have attorney's fees and legal fees and recording fees associated with tax title properties. In addition to that, we've used 15,000 out of overlay every year, except for this year, to go towards the senior work program, in which we allow 15 seniors to work up to $1,000 off their taxes. Again, it's a tax-related item, so we're trying to use extra tax money that didn't get spent and use it for those purposes, okay? And that's all your available revenues. So again, at the end of the day, you're only gonna have I've only forecasted about $362,000 in a $19.5 million budget of new revenue that we didn't have last year that we will have this year, okay? So, you know where this is going, right? Amount to be raised. So on page 2 and 3, I start moving into the general operating budget. The operating budget for the town is about 8.8 million. Of the total $19.5 million budget that we have, so a little bit under half. You could see changes. Now, the changes that you see here, it does show an increase going from 8.3 million to 8.8 million, but that's based on the reduced budget that was approved and then amended in July. We made reductions, then we made more reductions in December, okay? So if you go back to the budget that was last year, it was 8.322, this includes $150,000 for the rescue squad, which wasn't there in addition to that, so it shows a 5.63% increase in the general operating budget, but that's a big number because we made some reductions in December, okay? It wouldn't have been as big as if we didn't make those reductions in December, okay? So you can see where the changes will be. In general government, we went from 1 million to about 1.1. Public safety, now again, these are restoring things, so that's how we got that 5.63%. This new budget for FY15 includes a 1.3% increase for non-union personnel bylaw folks. That was recommended by the personnel board. They use the consumer price index as an indicator in terms of what's recommended. Worcester County Regional Retirement went up 10.5%. If you look under employee benefits, line item 800, we have some reductions there due to changes in health insurance, but we also had an almost 11% increase. It went from about 550,000 to about 600,000. Worcester County Regional Retirement, that is an actual amount, we've already received that. I've received last week a 3.75% increase in our health insurance, which is actually good. It may sound like bad, but the average is the range is anywhere from 0 to 10%. The average for all of the members of Maya, which is a group purchase conglomerate, a bunch of other towns run a big group purchasing arrangement, the average for the towns was 5.64. We came under that at 3.75. So the way they do the health insurance is they blend everybody together. So if your experience was really bad and you were at the 10%, but because we're blending you with other towns where their experience wasn't as bad, that 10% will come down. So you'll have that'll help you in the bad years. And when you have a very good year and your experience is very good and you're 1%, you may go up to 2 or 3% to help blend the people down. So the average was 5.64. Our net increase is proposed at 3.75. I'll be meeting with the Insurance Advisory Commission, which is members of all the different employee groups in terms of what changes we can make in terms of co-pays or other to help get rid of that 3.75%, and that'll happen in the next 30 days or so. And then I restored all the operational cuts. So everything that we cut in July and everything that we cut in December went back in. So I'll go through those individually in terms of all the individual line items. I have a spreadsheet here. But that's in addition how we got up to a 5.63% increase. We had those increases that I just mentioned already, and then in addition to that, I restored everything that was cut. So I just mentioned a couple things that the new budget, the initial budget includes, a couple things that it does not yet include. It does not include, the overall budget does not include increases yet from Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District and from Bay Path, above and beyond what the state has predicted for minimum local contribution amounts. Those numbers have already been broadcast on the State Department of Education's website, so I'll go through those in a second. Increases to tuition and transportation for the out-of-district vocational schools, I've level funded those. So if you look on sheet 2 of the spreadsheet of the expenses, where it says, $20,000 for, $20,000 for Smithville assessment, $24,000 for Smithville transportation, those are all level funded because those numbers have not been approved yet. The State Department of Education will approve the tuition rates for those schools, and then we'll have to factor in some money for transportation, which we have a vendor do that. So, but those numbers are level right now, so there could be increased liabilities as part of that. Okay, and then obviously, I'm expecting further liabilities that comes from Spencer East Brookfield and possibly Bay Path. As you know, I have 4 collective bargaining units that I'm working in negotiations now, and also 3 contracted department heads, so that current budget as that 8.8 does not include anything for them yet. So that may change. And then I haven't received increases for our general liability, which is, professional liability, workman's comp, other things that happen, that comes later in the year. So the next spreadsheet that I have for you is all of the different individual department accounts where I've either made restorations or made changes based on what happened in FY14. And just a brief summary, you will get some detail to this when the department heads come in front of you for their services review. And obviously they'll be going through the finance committee and talking about these things, but I figured I'd just run through them really quickly, if you like, or I can skip over it. If we go through them, I'll just maybe some highlights.
Please.
So if you recall, in July and December, I made some expense cuts. Like, the Board of Selectmen has a $5,000 expense cut. I cut $1,000. That was for, I believe, we do a spring newsletter. We said we're not gonna do the spring newsletter this year. That used to cover the printing cost of that. So I put that $1,000 back in. Floating hours, and then if you recall, we had some reductions. I eliminated a position in highway, eliminated a position in the assessors. Those went back in. I restored $5,800 that we had cut in the IT budget for computers, so we're not buying any new computers this year. People are making do with what they have, or they're scrambling around with any expense money that they have if a computer breaks and they need it. Let's see. Police department, for example, I restored the overtime that we cut. Fire department, I restored the firefighter salaries that we had cut. UNF, restored floating hours there that we had cut. Highway Department, if you recall, we cut all of the OT, 100% of their OT, I put that back in. We also eliminated sidewalk and drainage repairs this year, if you remember, I put that back in. I added some money for dams and stormwater management. We'll get into that when Steve comes with his, presentation. Let's see, Council on Aging, I put back in the Maple Street money, we cut that money out. I think originally we put $100,000 in July, and then in December, we left about 25,000 of that in because of electricity, as Bo knows, so I put $75,000 back in there. And then employee benefits, I mentioned that, we had cut, I restored expenses that we had cut, and I put back in the regional retirement, increase and the, health insurance increase. So that's a lot of, some highlights in terms of the changes and some of the things that happened from FY15 to the budget that was just passed in FY14. As far as education goes, I've incorporated $252,000 increase for Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District. That is approximately a 4% increase, and that is the minimum local contribution increase that is coming down mandated from the state as proposed. So keep in mind, I mentioned earlier, we have $362,000 in new revenue. The state's saying you usually have to put up an additional 4% minimal contribution in school. That doesn't include their transportation request, doesn't include any additional local, okay? Bay Path was the same thing, they had an additional 85,000 or so increase to their minimum local contribution. This overall budget includes that. Capital program has not been completed yet, we're going through that process. We have a meeting tonight, staff presentations tomorrow night in front of the capital committee. And this budget does not include, again, unfortunately, any transfers that we would go to support the, some of the liabilities that we have, such as OPEB, pension liability, sick leave buyback, or unemployment reserve. So in summary, the initial budget estimates a total of $379,000 in additional revenue. That's $362,000 in tax levy, $8,000 reduction in local aid, and then the $25,000 additional money from the assessor's overlay that I mentioned, but that money's gonna be used for, their, triannual evaluation, okay? The initial budget estimates $809,000 in additional expenses, which is represented, by, $471,000 in general government increases, $338 in, school expenditure increases. So the difference between the additional expenses and additional revenues is about $430,000. There's a $53,000 adjustment to the debt exclusions because the library came off. And then the lack of $400,000 in free cash leads us to right now at this point an $883,954 budget deficit, okay? So I think last time I think I mentioned 700, or maybe last week I mentioned 850, so. Keep in mind, this is gonna change, or 883, some things may go down, and some things may go up, okay? But any way you look at it, it's not positive at this point in time, but we all knew that, I think, based on the fact that free cash wasn't gonna be there, and we were gonna go through this process of the budget of, let's go back to where we were in May, before we had our crisis related to the school, figure out what services we were providing, what the costs were, and then when staff comes in, hear those presentations, figure out what the other increases are related to education, and then go through that process, like I said when I opened up. What are you gonna keep, what are you gonna get rid of, what are you gonna ask for an override for, if at all, okay? Any questions in terms of numbers? I'll do is I'll go through the calendar again, and I'll outline the process for you folks or anyone watching, real quick.
Just, Mr. Chairman, just a clarification, so Adam, we have the department heads' best numbers to this point, and what we're gonna be hearing are explanation of what's behind these numbers, or are there still more to come with your departments?
Nope, what I'd say is you're gonna hear two things. The thing that you just mentioned is the typical thing, or for lack of a better word, that the finance committee will hear. As you and Tony know from sitting in the finance committee before, the department heads prepare these budgets, they'll go in front of the finance committee, and they'll go through them line item through line item, answer questions, and then they'll make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. Board of Selectmen will then tweak anything if at all necessary, and then establish the warrant article for the budgets, okay? What's new this year is, on top of that, is they're gonna be coming in front of the Board of Selectmen, and one is there'll be an opportunity to discuss the same budget that they're presenting at FinCom. You can hear that again, But more importantly, what you're gonna hear is, some narrative or some, what I call education in terms of things you may not know or things the public does not know in terms of what it takes to fund the services that we provide. You know, how do we staff our fire department? We have one full-time fireman, we have X number of, on-call folks, you know, when they get paid, when they go to fire, they get paid hourly, this is our budget for that. You know, any reductions to that, you know, this is what the impact would be, okay? You know, these are things that other towns do that we're not doing, some specialties that we used to do, we've eliminated already. These are things that, you know, you may deem essential, you may deem non-essential. Again, I don't think there's a lot of that, but we're gonna go through that process anyway. So there will be an opportunity for staff, departments coming before you. If you like, you can hear them go through their budget as they do at the finance committee. In addition to that, the services review that we've been talking about, okay?
All set with that?
I have one question, that's an aside, which I don't wanna spend a lot of time on, but we saw this number last year, that there's a mandated minimum, increase in local contribution required by the state, and it always exceeds what 2.5 allows us to add. Has that ever been challenged? Is there?
It was challenged last year when the selectmen, the board of selectmen from the town of Dudley worked with Representative Durant to file a bill that required that any increase that would come from a regional school district would be maxed at 2.5%, and that anything above that would require an override. So when Mr. Durant comes, you can ask him where that stands. But yes, it's, if you read the papers, last year, the year before that, and you'll read again this year, that is going on with a lot of different communities, especially regional school districts, because of the state aid formula, chapter 70 formula is changing. What they're doing is there's two things that go on in terms of what, the school budget will look like, in terms of what the chapter 70 will look like. One is, just on the sheer fact that things go up, they're gonna require that you pay more than you did the last year, right? And on top of that, what they're requiring is a shift in the responsibility, the percentage that the state pays in chapter 70, and the percentage that the town pays from local levy or other means, that is shifting. So let's say, you know, so many years ago it was 75-25, and then they're working towards 50-50, and then beyond that. So I don't know the number off the top of my head, are we at 63-37 or 60-40, where we are, but what they're happening is, so you're basically getting a double hit. You're getting an increase because of the fact that, you know, things go up every year, they don't go down, so they feel that, you know, you need to, you know, the budget needs to go up, so therefore we're gonna pay a little bit and you're gonna pay a little bit. So the minimum local contribution required of us will go up. And then on top of that, the shift in the formula, there's a change to that. There's a whole lot of other variables, I'm just doing a real crib note version. There's other things in terms of, you know, what the equalized value of the community is, you know, what our per capita income is, and a whole bunch of other things that go into it, but that's the short version. You're getting a double hit every year. And yes, it's approaching what we pay in 2.5, or our new revenue in terms of 2.5, where when we don't have any increase in local receipts and we don't have any new state aid, there's nothing left for us on the town side.
Is those challenges taking the form of an actual, you know, face-off in the courts with?
There's not been a legal
Okay, a legal challenge.
suit, if you will, but
Yeah.
there's been a bill filed through the legislature to change, to put a cap to that formula.
Interesting, okay, thank you.
All set? Okay.
Okay, I'll run through the calendar real quick, just so for anyone that's watching or for the board as a refresher. Tomorrow night I'll be meeting with the capital committee, that'll be the initial staff presentations. A week from tomorrow night, Tuesday the 18th, I'll be meeting with the finance committee, I'll have the same discussion, a budget presentation with them next week. You have a workshop next Wednesday. I don't think the school district will be ready, they have a meeting tomorrow night. So those of you not watching, you're not gonna see this, but tomorrow night there's a school committee meeting at 7 o'clock, I believe it's in Wire Village. And I believe there's gonna be an initial discussion for them as far as their budget. I did get communication back from the superintendent that he may not be able to meet with these timelines. So we'll try and get them in on other dates. On the 24th, which is 2 weeks from tonight, Senator Brewer, Representative Goby, and Representative Durant will be here. And at that night, I'll have my initial discussion in terms of municipal services. So I'll present to you, actually you have it in your packets over the weekend, all the information the department heads have provided you. What I'd like you to do that night, what we're gonna do is, you tell me what information is in there, or that you've received, what is missing? What else would you like to see, so that when they come in the following week, 2 weeks later, I'm sorry, that is 1 week later, because February is only 28 days. No, it is 2 weeks later, March 10th. So the March 10th, there'll be an advertised public hearing, that'll be the first night where you'll have staff come in, and they'll give they'll have half the staff come in that night and give a review of all the services. And then the following week, let's see, you have it again, okay? On the 17th, the workshop, you'll have another public hearing, and then followed by that, a week later, on March 24th, you'll have a third public hearing, which you'll actually have to, that's the night you make decisions in terms of, you know, based on everything you've heard, based on where we're at in the budget, what are we gonna do? So you're gonna make some advisements to me to change the budget, or write a ballot question for X, or make certain cuts, or do whatever. That's Judgment Day, if you will, March 24th. Prior to that, we have a couple of meetings with the Finance Committee on the 11th and the 18th, where staff will make additional presentations. You'll have the Bay Path and Spencer East Brookfield coming before the Finance Committee on March 25th. The Finance Committee, as required by our general bylaw that creates the Finance Committee, they're required to have a public hearing on the budget. That'll take place on April 1st. And on April 7th, you'll vote to close the annual town meeting warrant. May 1st is the annual town meeting, and May 13th is the annual town election. Okay? Questions?
That's not.
All right, so I think that's everything. Right? Okay. All right, so what I'd like you to do as far as the next item is, what we need to do is we need to open the annual town meeting warrant. So as you saw from the calendar, we will close the warrant on April 7th. So between now and then, different departments, also citizens petitions can submit articles, and obviously this board will then vote to submit articles for the annual town meeting warrant. I'd like you to open it tonight. We'll go through the process of discussing budget and other articles over the next several months. I'll have other articles, transfers, different things that we need to do, language changes, bylaws, whatever. And then we'll close it. We seek to close on April 7th. Okay?
I do, Donnie.
Motion to open the annual town meeting warrant, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion, do I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we'll close it April 7th. Board liaison reports, anybody have anything?
Mr. Chairman, I attended the Finance Committee's meeting last week, where they started their initial review of the budget, and, we do have fine-tooth comb reviews, the same as we are, and you're invited to come to our public hearings as well. So that started, and capital is tomorrow night.
Is that at 7?
5:30 Capital Committee tomorrow night, but we have presentations going right up through till 8:30.
FinCom tomorrow too?
Finance Committee's not tomorrow night.
Oh, school committee.
School Committee tomorrow night at 7.
All right,
Yeah.
okay. Citizens input. Anybody want to take a second shot? Seeing none. Board member or staff comments?
Mr. Chairman, this past week, local Spencer resident, Dan Martin, was injured in a snowmobile accident. He was part of those football teams that we gave the plaques to. He was one of the captains, and injuries to his leg were severe enough where they had to amputate it. So they set up a fund, Mike Lucia, president of Webster Credit, set up a fund for him, and you can go to any branch and donate to help. I think he's still in Maine right now, so.
It is.
They plan on getting him here as soon as he's well enough, but, so best wishes and get better, but he's
Real
a tough kid.
He is
so.
a tough kid. Thoughts and prayers go out to everybody on that one. It's a tough one. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, just wanted to get a heads up that during the Finance Committee's meeting last week, there seemed to be interest in that group to bring back up the possible meals tax for this town. So, let's see where that goes, but it's probably gonna be something we want to discuss in a future workshop.
Do you remember what the estimate was from that?
I don't remember the estimate. I know the percent, it's 0.75, so
Yeah,
you have a 6.25 sales tax on top of that, another 0.75, so
Right.
you'd be paying, 7% on top of your bill. and then the town will get that portion. I don't have an
I
estimate.
think it was really, really low, that's why we
I
didn't.
mean, I'm trying, I can find out from some area towns what they get. I think Sturbridge, with all the residents they have, they're probably in the 200,000 range, where I think Leicester, from, remember conversations with Bobby, was probably in the 40,000 range.
Yeah, it
So
was
we'd probably,
below that,
we'd be
I
closer
think.
to that than we would obviously the 200, but.
Charlton has it too, I think, yeah.
Yeah, they have the benefit of having the Mass Pike, having the
Right.
restaurants on the Mass Pike. So they get a lot of revenue from that.
You know, you got Leicester, Charlton, Auburn. What's the other one?
I know Ronnie's has it, cause they hit you with that extra tax when you buy a fish sandwich.
They hit you with it?
They hit you hard, it says local tax on it, it's whatever.
Sounds kinda fishy to me.
It does, it's very fishy.
Yeah. Okay. We have a request for executive session.
We need to go into executive session,
Are you voting after, Adam? No.
not tonight.
All right, so I'll make a motion to go into executive session in Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Paragraph 2, for the purpose of discussing strategy and preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, and Paragraph 3, for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining.
A motion,
Second.
second. It's a roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Yep.
Always one.
You are, Tom.
Always one, my brother. Okay, we will, come out of just to adjourn, right?
Just to adjourn.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.